What's up and welcome back. John Stark, MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic. 1999 was a great year for films. 1999 also means that films are celebrating their 25th anniversary. And even though it's a little late because it doesn't line up month to month, I do want to celebrate the fact that The Matrix is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And let's talk about The Matrix. So, this film does have audio description on it. It's the Media Access Group, and it was credited really weird where I thought it sounded like everybody was doing narration. Instead of saying like written by, it was like narration by and then voiced by. And I was like, what? So I wrote down some stuff. None of the names were people I had heard of before. So this was probably done a long time ago. Time ago. Um, and so kudos to doing a good job, you know, a long time ago for this. It also is like descriptive video service at Media Access Group. It's like feels like it's like a subdivision of it's not the way Media Access Group cites themselves nowadays. So I don't know when this was made. I think the guy who actually voices this, his name is Peter something. There's a bunch of names on this, and like 4 people between the narrated by and voiced by. It's a very weird way to credit at the end. Anyway, but The Matrix has audio description. I got this on Netflix. I'm sure it has audio description too when it rotates other places like Max, since it is a Warner Brothers movie. So I don't know. Like, what do I say about the Matrix? This is another one of those films where it's like I don't know what else to offer to the conversation of The Matrix. Sort of like I didn't really know what else to say about Schindler's List except to just kind of talk about how a film has what it means to me, what it has meant to me, and what having audio description of the film means to me. So The Matrix came out at a time just before I got my driver's license. So I did not have a driver's license at the time, so I did not drive. I could not see The Matrix, did not have that ability. I did not see it in theaters. I'm admitting this. I saw it later on at home. I rented it when it came out later. So that was my first experience with The Matrix. And I kind of remember The Matrix being one of those things too that people didn't really know. Like there wasn't hype for it in the way that there's hype for films nowadays. The Wachowskis at this time were not known for doing big films. Keanu, I mean, he's kind of always found ways to stay relevant and stay big, but it's not like Keanu in 1999, like going into 1999 was like the biggest box office star we had. So, and certainly Laurence Fishburne and Carrie were not going to help carry the film. So there really wasn't a lot here. That's why it had a spring release date. The film was budgeted well enough, and the Wachowskis did a lot with their budget. So they made a film look really cool, really great, really stylistic. And a film that has stood the test of time and has a lot of fans and everything with not a lot, which is always great. It's when you can challenge great filmmakers to make something amazing with not a lot of money. That to me feels way more rewarding than throwing $200 million at Matthew Vaughn to make Argyle. Like, what the fuck? Anyway, so, yeah, so we get Mr. Anderson is played by Keanu Reeves. He's just kind of living his boring life, and then he gets hints that there might be something more, and then we're introduced to Agent Smith, Hugo Weaving, who wants him for questioning, and he gets thrown into this world with Trinity, played by Carrie Moss, who then introduces him to Morpheus, played by Laurence Fishburne, and all the rest of the gang. Later on down, red pill or blue pill, and wake up, and suddenly you find out that you've been living a lie, that your entire life has been a dream, and that there's all this weird stuff you've been hooked up to all this time. And yeah, so now it's time to take down the system, and Neo just might be the one. And I love that, like, later on, we actually got a movie called The One with Jet Li, which had very Matrixy vibes. They just, like, unabashedly ripped it off. They were just like, wait, so Neo was the one, so we could make a movie called The One and see how much money it'll make at the box office. Um, there were other movies that came out around the same time that had sort of a general Matrixy vibe to it. That you could say were maybe Matrix inspired. Existenz was one of them. Existenz came out really close to the Matrix, a lot closer than like Equilibrium did. So it's really hard to say that Existenz is a Matrix knockoff because of how like it would have needed to be in production. It's like somebody would have needed to know the Matrix was going to be a hit, and then they would have needed a film that was similarly themed. So I don't really think Existenz is Equilibrium, maybe more so, because Equilibrium definitely feels a lot like The Matrix, but different. Um, we also had stuff like Dark City, with Alex Proyas's Dark City that was released around the same time, had a lot of the same-ish themes. So we were just kind of living in this like pre 2000s, people thought the world was going to end. There was the stuff about the computers and how they wouldn't be able to turn over, and nothing was set for the year 2000 and all that kind of stuff. So um, we did not know what was going to happen. The Millennium Bug. And I think we got these films that were all sort of like science fiction-y, all kind of about the same thing all around the same time. And The Matrix just happened to be one of those. And some of these films didn't do great at the box office. Dark City didn't do great. So I'm sure they thought The Matrix wasn't going to do great. But then it did. Turned into a huge thing, a big phenomenon. And it kind of caught on more and more once it opened. Just word of mouth. Stayed in theaters for a while. And slowly earned its money, eventually got its sequels, but then its sequels got larger budgets, and the sequels aren't as good. So even though you're going to hear me praise The Matrix for being one of the best films ever made, you're not going to hear that about Reloaded and Revolutions and Revelations. It's just not going to happen. So, I feel like sometimes when filmmakers are challenged, they can make their best work with very little. I still think one of Christopher Nolan's best movies is Memento, like easily like a top three film for him. And he didn't have the budget. He was unproven. He was trying to prove himself, and he made Memento. It's still a great film to this day. And nowadays, you just throw money at him, and of course, he can make like Oppenheimer. I mean, like, what's the skill? Like, what is he showing now? But if you look at back in the day at his earlier films like Following and Memento, you see what he was really capable of when he was given very little to do. And I think Memento is excellent. So The Matrix is still the best thing that the Wachowskis has ever done. Ever. They've never lived up to this in any other thing that they've ever done. And they do swing for the fences. So it is very weird to hear them credited at the end as Andy and Larry. Because those are not the names they go by anymore. But we have not retroactively changed the credits, so they were Andy and Larry at the time. So that's what's in the credits. And this is it's just a film that I've loved. I've seen. I don't. It's funny because it's not like Jurassic Park level of love, where I just could watch the film literally anytime, and for some reason I've seen that film, I don't know, 100 times. Childhood all the way through. It's like one of those things where it's like, yes, I would love to go to Jurassic Park. I even watched the cartoons. I'm really excited for. Actually, probably by the time I put this out, considering. Yeah, okay, timing wise. So I'm sure I will love the new Jurassic World series. I should say that. um, that I'm about to watch. Anyway, yeah, so I'm just all things Jurassic. I get really disappointed when I don't like a Jurassic film. Um, and it just disappoints me. Fallen Kingdom disappointed me a lot. But yeah, The Matrix just kind of was like the one film was great, and then like the sequels were just dropping. after that. But I do still love The Matrix, and I think it works as a cohesive film because I think the Wachowskis directed a film where they weren't promised sequels. They didn't know they were going to get sequels. Maybe they wanted sequels. Maybe they had a trilogy in mind just in case. But they made sure to direct a coherent first film from beginning to end that kicks ass. And it so pays off. And this film is still culturally relevant. It was weird because it's like mentioned in the Animaniacs reboot. I mean, like there's so many times where like the Matrix has just popped up in pop culture, and it's odd because it's an R-rated film, so like kids aren't supposed to get Matrix references, but we kind of just realized that the Matrix is not a hard R. There really isn't anything about this that would stop a parent, from anybody who's seen it, from being like, yeah, I wouldn't, I think the R is maybe like gives you pause, but I would treat this like a PG-13. It maybe has more gun violence than you're used to. I don't know, but it's really not. I'm sure it's like maybe has like a second fuck in there somewhere, like an R rating. We lived in weird times. American Pie, literally in the same year, 1999, went back and in order to get its R rating, it had to remove like 2 thrusts into the pie, was the request. So Jim had to thrust less into the pie. That's another series I'm really hoping to tackle this year because of the anniversary. But The Matrix, just, I don't know. Like, I could do some sort of like weird essay dive into all the different meanings of The Matrix, but it's just a lot easier to just fanboy over it and to talk about the fact that I really love the audio description for this. I think the audio description does the best job you possibly could do. I thought about it from the perspective of, okay, so I could see and now I'm blind. So is this movie jogging my memory enough? And I think the film does a really good job of shaping the world of The Matrix and trying to explain some of the weirdest action sequences and some of the hardest to describe action sequences, because when you start deconstructing what the world is around you, like conceptually, and like suddenly you can blast through walls or you can fly or like suddenly things that don't make sense or in the real world just fold in on themselves and characters change into other things, and like this film has so many things that don't follow the rules necessarily, that the audio description has a lot, which is probably why they had like 3 writers, was to make sure they got everything in there. Is it, if you're congenitally born blind and you had to watch this, I feel like you would watch this and be excited. I feel like this is an action film that you can follow, and the action feels interesting enough. They even make some references to like the visual effects. There's a lot of references to like the Matrix code and the green, especially towards the end of the way that the film fades out. I really liked how that was told and described. Bullet time is tough. Bullet time is it's a bitch. It's tough. It's really hard to describe bullet time. And maybe that's probably the weakest, was the bullet time, but it's really tough because there were so much visuals in it, and like the ripple effects and everything slowing down, and doing that like weird back bend that everyone has tried to recreate. So yeah, when we enter bullet time, which has been used in other films to other effects, and then later in video games too, like Max Payne really was big into using bullet time. So the Wachowskis really created this thing that became sort of like this phenomenon for a little while. Everybody was like, "Ooh, how can we use this?" Wanted uses it to some extent too. It slows down and follows the bullet. So it's used in other things that are not just the Matrix. So this is a film that I'm happy has audio description. I think it's a classic. I think The Matrix is 25 years. I feel like we're at a point where we should be calling this a classic. I don't know if this is in the National Film Library, but it should be. If we haven't inducted this yet, I know it usually is like it's like a you have to have been like a certain amount of years. It's sort of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing. So I think we're at a time though where 1999 films can be inducted. Um, I think it's only like 10 years. I think it has to be at least 10 years. So if we haven't done The Matrix, I don't know why not. So it should be there. This should be something that we are working to preserve um, forever. We don't need to preserve the sequels. We just need to preserve the original film. So yeah, this is not like The Godfather where you're like, do we preserve the whole thing? Do we preserve the first two? How many Indiana Jones movies do we preserve? Should we preserve the original Star Wars trilogy or just A New Hope? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can have those debates with like other franchises where you're like, how many of these deserve to be on this very limited list? With The Matrix, it's like, yeah, just The Matrix. If we're talking about film preservation. You know, if aliens were coming from another planet and we needed to show them some stuff, I'd show them The Matrix, but I wouldn't show them the sequels. So, uh, yeah. So, love the audio description. I love that it's accessible. I love that it's out there. I love that it's made it to Netflix, too. I love that Netflix is carrying the audio description for The Matrix, and this isn't just like a Max thing. I love that I was able to watch this on Netflix, and that this is audio description that's traveling. This is a 25-year-old film that has audio description. Generally, the older and older we get with films, the less chance of having audio description. So I'm just happy that The Matrix. You would think that like it means all big films, but this time last year, I also did a review for Jurassic Park, which was on Peacock, that they were carrying without audio description. That's their streaming service, and they did not have audio description, and it was the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park. And I railed into them. You can watch that review. It's somewhere on my channel. I can tell you now that they've rectified that like a year later. They just fairly recently uploaded the audio description that already existed to Jurassic Park. Took them that long to upload it to their own streaming service. So yeah, it's an uphill battle. So I wasn't guaranteed audio description for this, but I got it, and I'm really excited about that. So anyway, this is just sort of like an appreciation for The Matrix. Is this the greatest thing Keanu Reeves has ever done? That's tough. He is very much Neo. It's definitely one of those defining roles where it's gonna be so hard to find another Neo later on down the road, because it would be easier to replace him in Speed than it would be to replace him in The Matrix. If they're going to try to ever remake or reboot The Matrix and they have to pick a new Neo, it's going to be really hard and met with a lot of fan resistance. The same thing just sort of like with Indiana Jones. It's really hard to pick a new Indiana Jones, which is why they haven't done it. Which is why they think it's better for us to watch 80-year-old Harrison Ford in the fifth Indiana Jones film, because they're too afraid of replacing him and what that might mean for the franchise. Not everything is James Bond. Sometimes we become way too attached to an actor and a role. And I think that's possible here with Keanu Reeves. I think it's probably too hard to replace him at this point. He's probably too iconic as Neo in this franchise. It'd be interesting to see, though. I wonder. It's definitely something I have a question about. Can this be remade or rebooted at any point in time down the future? I don't think we need it now, but I'm just saying, like, if they try to do it 30, 40 years from now, could they? I don't know. So anyway, I mean, like, we have older films like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is so associated with Clint Eastwood, which is old enough now that if they did want to remake it, they probably could, but nobody's touched it. Nobody's touched Citizen Kane. It's Orson Welles. So, arguably, we've tried to do different things with The Wizard of Oz, but nobody's really tried to make The Wizard of Oz with Judy Garland, like, the same way, as a full-length feature film. We've made, like, animated versions of it. We've made, like, The Wiz and Wicked. We try to find new ways of telling the same story, but nobody's actually tried to remake The Wizard of Oz because it's fucking iconic. So you just show the original thing. And I kind of think The Matrix is like that. I just kind of think it's not going to be touched. So, Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'm gonna give The Matrix an A plus. I'm gonna throw it up there in my favorites of all time. It's usually what I do when I put a plus next to something. A plus is not a real grade. A is usually good enough. A plus just is like, ah, you know. Yeah. So, hopefully you guys love The Matrix too. I'm really happy. 25 years of The Matrix. It's crazy. I feel old. Anyway, yeah, I've played like the video games. I played The Matrix Online. I did. I played that game. The MMO. I had the MMO at launch. There was no one there. It was so depressing. I was like one or two other people on the server. It was the most depressing MMO launch, and they were pushing it so hard. And I was like, oh my god, an online MMO for The Matrix? Yeah, I'll try this. Jumped into it. No one was there, and it was very like incomplete, and it just wasn't really well made. It just was very shitty. And I played the PlayStation game where you're not playing as Neo, you're playing as someone else. I think you're playing as Jada Pinkett Smith's character from the franchise, but don't quote me on that. It's been years I haven't played that. So anyway, yeah, Indiana Matrix, and I think I've consumed everything possible that is Matrix, is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if there's anything else that's Matrix that I haven't seen, played, or whatever. So yeah. But I will do the sequels, which are not as good, and go downhill with each sequel, by the way. So, yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.